Well, the 2025 MLS season is almost back, and we have proof because some of us got to watch FC Cincinnati play the Philadelphia Union on YouTube this past Friday. We saw flashes of Kevin Denke before his lights went out. We saw Orishano and Kubo back on the pitch, Pavel Buka dicing up defenders. But you know who we didn't see? We didn't see Lucho Acosta, because the Acosta saga continues, and we've got news. We're going to talk about that and much more tonight on episode 401 of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Let's welcome in the team. We've got Coach joining us again tonight. Coach, welcome back.
Yeah, happy to be here. I feel like one of the big kids. I get to be at the adult table so often now. I do feel a little gross calling you mugs adults, but other than that, life is good.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. Good to have you tonight, Coach. Jason is joining us from Harrison, Ohio. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Just think, in a couple of years, instead of talking about preseason, we will be talking about the middle of the season because MLS is going to be playing through the winter. So that's going to happen, and I'll be sad.
Oh man, that'll change some things up for a lot of us, won't it? Yeah, no doubt. Justin, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Just getting all these interviews and stuff like that lined up. We have some good ones already recorded and a few really interesting ones in the future. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, sounds good. I know we got a lot of new content, and you've been kind of pushing those buttons a little bit and get some new faces in front of our Cincinnati Soccer Talk audience, and doing some new interviews, which again, as you mentioned, we'll talk about that later on in the show. Guys, we want to just say a big thank you and a shout out to Apollo Home for sponsoring all our shows here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Thank you, Apollo, for that. Temperatures, I don't know how it is in Cincinnati, but temperatures have plummeted here in Fort Wayne. And if Apollo Home was active in Fort Wayne, I think I would give them a call. So for all of you in Cincinnati, I would just, again, thank you to Apollo Home. I've got this read right in front of me, and I'm messing it up, gentlemen. Temps have plummeted. We warned you all year long to keep things cozy with Apollo Home. Peace of mind is worth the $29 tune-up. Get our great sponsor on your schedule soon. All right, now that I've flubbed that up, let's get into some player news here on the show. Let's talk. We're going to talk about Acosta a lot tonight, gentlemen. So let's just push pause on that for a second. We saw Barreal get loaned out that's official now to Santos FC, and it looks like he'll be playing with Neymar coming in here soon to Santos FC. So we're excited about that for him. I wish we could have seen him in Cincinnati this year, but he's out. Kubo is back in training. He showed up late to preseason training and saw him out on the pitch this last week. We've got news of potentially Evander, but that's really dependent on the Lucho Acosta news. So let's go ahead and land on Lucho Acosta news. Coach, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? And what do you expect to happen with Lucho Acosta here?
Yeah, I mean, that is the big question, right? It seems like our news sources, much like yourself flubbing that read, they must also be in preseason mode because we're just not getting enough of it. No, I mean, what you're hearing is that Lucho was maybe going to go to Estudiantes via some third-party group, but then there were no actual formal contract offers made because of this weird situation with the third-party group. And now Tom Bogert is reporting that both FC Dallas and the San Jose Earthquakes kind of are showing some interest in Lucho. So it would be great to get him somewhere else if that's where he wants to go, just so the situation is resolved. I don't think anyone in Cincinnati is like, oh yeah, punt him out the door, get him away quick, other than the fact that it seems so much like he wants to go. It's not doing him, it's not doing us, it's not doing the team any good for him to just continue to do his tricks on the sideline of the preseason game where we all try to say, is that the back of Lucho's head? Oh wait, we need to watch what's happening on the field because we're probably not going to see him on the field for FC Cincinnati this year.
But Coach, it's the thing, right? Does he really want to go? In his most recent comments and reported by Laurel, it sounds like he wants to stay. And this has all been, mismanagement that's trying to push him out. Jason, what do you think about all of this?
I think Look, my background is in public relations and marketing, and I have done some media training. And one of the things that you need to do is keep a consistent story. And Lucho has not kept a consistent story throughout the entire thing. If we remember, right after the loss to NYCFC that knocked FC Cincinnati out of the playoffs, he said that he was ready to move on. He told any ESPN Argentina outlet that would listen how much he wanted to come back to Argentina, how much he liked Cincinnati, but his time was up there. He was ready to leave. And then he goes to even told Laurel that basically right after the season was over. And now that it seems that the deal to Estudiantes is probably falling apart, it seems like he's changing up his story a little bit. So I'm of the belief that he is trying to do some last minute PR work because his original hopes of going back to Argentina did not pan out.
Yeah. Is it, Jason, do you think it's PR work to mend some bridges that were potentially burned with the team that he does or doesn't want to be with? Or do you think he really thinks he's going to end up here because everything's falling through and he's trying to right some wrongs?
I mean, if he thinks he's going to end up here, trying to throw your general manager under the bus is a weird way to go about ingratiating yourself to the coaching staff and the front office. Because it was clear right after that came out, the statement FC Cincinnati put out throwing their full support behind Chris Albright kind of, solidified it. So I'll be surprised if he's here. I don't want to jump ahead too much. I'll be surprised if he's here. And if I were coaching him on what to say, it would not have been any of that, just to be honest.
Justin, what are your thoughts on Lucho and the Chris Albright situation? Who's in the wrong here? Who's in the right? We haven't heard anything from the Cincinnati's front office.
Yeah, I think that message comes directly from the front office, and I'll challenge a little bit of what you said, Jason. I think Lucho had mentioned after the match against NYCFC, he had mentioned that the club had hurt him in some way, and I think that was probably alluding to what we're hearing here with some of his buddies that weren't retained from last year. Lucho, in my opinion, I feel like he felt like with the performance, the MVP performance, this is my opinion, but just judging the man off of his character, I think he felt like that warranted some say in how the roster is managed. And clearly that's not the direction we went. I mean, Chris was facing a terribly hard situation to deal with, and I think we're seeing that at LA Galaxy. When you hit some of those performance metrics and you get these bonuses out there, that's going to hit your salary cap really hard the next year. So I think, look, Lucho and Chris Albright are headed to being FC Cincinnati Hall of Famers, if I can be completely blunt about it, right? You have a player that's, been 3-time all MLS team, MVP in 2023. Lucho has done so much as the captain of this team, but also Chris Albright has done so much as the general manager of this team, right? He's been able to completely flip this on its head, bring in players that may not be perfect long-term fits for us. We've had issues, but he's definitely been able to at least get a coherent team out there that Pat Noonan can work with some depth. Right. I know not perfect, and we definitely hit the injury bug last year, but I think that both people are speaking their mind. I think Chris is doing what he's supposed to be doing his job and making sure this is the best available roster within salary cap. And I think that Lucho is disappointed and would like to move on.
It's hard when you hear, I think anytime you hear one half of the story, right? And we really are only getting Lucho's side of the story, and it's kind of flipped, from the end of last season till now. And, some of it, Justin, you pointed out, there was some consistency there potentially in him being hurt and what that was, and maybe that coming out now, but we're not getting the front office's side of the story, leaving us to speculate what's happening. And I think we talked about it briefly on the live show a week or so ago, that the whole Kubo situation was really quiet. He just wasn't there. There was nothing in the public eye, and it makes me think that there was some of that being handled appropriately behind closed doors. Let's talk about this. Keep it out of the public eye. When you're here, you're here. And the fact that Lucho's been talking to the media a little bit, again, skews our opinion one way or the other, that, maybe he's right, or no, you get out of here. You were done, because we're just not hearing the other side of the story. I think that's the challenge in this whole thing. But I do appreciate that about a front office that wants to handle things behind closed doors. We're just not getting that side of the story. But it does, it does open up the doors for other players to step in. We've got guys like Dotto. We've got, Steven Jimenez stepping in potentially in that midfield. What do we see, other signings potentially coming? Evander, we saw the tweet earlier today, even, I think, that they expect Lucho to be with Dallas and Evander to be in Cincinnati by this time next week. We'll see if that really happens. We've been hoping for something sooner than later. Guys, what are you seeing as far as in Lucho's absence, potentially, most likely? Who is going to fill that gap? Is it going to be a new player? Is it going to be one of the young guys stepping up that maybe we saw in the game against Philadelphia this last week?
I think it has to be a new player. I just don't think that you have somebody that can fit that Cam role on this team. We've seen Dotto Valenzuela play that position before. Kubo with relative success at that position, right? But there's far better positions for him on the field than playing the Cam. So it has to be a new player. So that gives further credence to Evander being one of those players that we bring in.
A new player or a new tactic, right? Because you don't have to play with a true attacking central midfielder or, a singular focal point for the offense like Lucho is. There are lots of teams in the world that don't. You could play 3-4-3 and play with wingers. And even in that setup, I would argue you probably have a better chance. You put a Corey Baird or Yuya Kubo out wide, and Orshano on the other wing is going to hold a lot of gravity, right? We know that. And then give those guys fewer defenders to run at. You're facing the field. You're only running at maybe an outside center back or maybe an outside defender if they get back in time to defend you, right? When you put players in the pocket as a number 10 and ask them to receive the ball, play on the half turn, maybe try to dribble a defender, maybe try to slot a through ball. You're asking them to do a lot of things. And that's where you need a guy like Evander. If Evander steps into this team, the team's still going to look a lot different. It's going to play differently because he is not the kind of player that's going to try to beat someone off the dribble every time he picks it up. He's going to be much more likely to keep that ball moving. But again, he's then going to have guys that he needs to bring in and then get the ball back. It's going to be more a give and get. With Lucho, like we all know this, sometimes the ball goes and just disappears into the black hole that is Lucho, and then either it comes out into some beautiful area and it's a goal or a chance, or it goes into a defender's foot or something else. I think Evander will keep the ball moving. All that to say that the tactics are going to change. Lucho is a singular kind of player. I've been saying this over and over, even when we were talking about we need a backup for when he's hurt. Like, you can't back up Lucho. He doesn't even know what he's going to do when he has the ball. He talked about that. He's like, I don't know who I'm going to pass or what I'm going to try to do to the last possible second. He is playing Argentinian street soccer, and you're not going to get another player to come in and do that. I don't know that you'd want another player to come in and do that. So long-winded answer of saying that, yeah, it's got to be either a new player or a completely new way of generating chances.
Well, I think that's go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just kind of wondering, and Coach or Justin or anybody just chime in on this. I wonder, last year we saw Luka kind of be given more freedom to move about the pitch, to explore the space, if you were. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's going to play into maybe the tactical thinking this year. If Lucho's not around, Luka is kind of, from my layman's point of view, probably the best on the ball or the best just overall gifted midfielder that we have. I wonder if that's going to play a little bit into Pat Noonan's thinking as we move forward with whoever comes in after Lucho. If Luka is maybe going to be more of a focal point for the attack this year.
I think he's definitely the scouting focal point for other teams, right? You cannot let this guy get to central locations on the field, and once he drives in toward net, you're cooked. So you're gonna have to be able to create space for him to run into. I think he had a lot of success in that toward the end of the year, but you're gonna have to find somebody else that can handle the ball and somebody else that's going to be able to read the runs that we're trying to make, both out on the outside, but also centrally with Dinke.
Yeah, I think Orshano's one who he is quick. He attacks well. He handles the ball well, and he creates opportunities for himself. I think we need a player that can create opportunities for others. Now, I'm not saying Orshano can't do that. I think he excels in open spaces, beating defenders, and running by them and creating opportunities there.
Yeah.
I want to transition because I think this conversation of what's it going to look like without Lucho potentially, maybe some of those questions are starting to be answered that we saw in this preseason match against Philadelphia. It was a 4-1 victory after Cincinnati went down 1-0 in the 8th minute of the match. It looked to be a little dire. And then our guys started putting balls in the net, starting with Pavel Buka in the 61st minute. Obi in the 64th followed one up, Halsey later, and then Kenji in the extra, they played 30 extra minutes. He put one in when the kids were in. What did you guys see? They played, we had a trialist, Engel, on the left side. We saw a little bit more from him. We saw him paired with who was it? The new signing. I'm blanking. Flores as the left center back. So we saw a new pairing on the left side of that back line. We saw some potential there. We saw maybe Yedlin maybe not going forward as much as we would have liked him go forward on the right side. But we saw Pavel Buka playing in a much more advanced role without Lucho Acosta. Do you think we're going to see some of that? Jason, did you watch the match? Did you get a chance to see that? I
watched about half of it, to be honest, and I did kind of get to see some of that. Buka, I think, gives you a lot more. I think there's part of Buka's game that we haven't quite seen yet. Last year, he was asked to do a lot more defensively. We know he's capable of scoring, and I would not be surprised if maybe he is going to be asked to be a little bit more attack minded this year. And whenever you see goals coming from Buka and Obi, that's always something to build off of.
It was pretty fantastic. Obi's goal off the post, off of the keeper's back. Those are the worst. I'll tell you guys, as a goalkeeper, when a ball hits the post and then it comes back and hits you, it's terrible. It's terrible.
I hate to break it to all you, but the stats would then read Buka goal, and then second goal is own goal, not Obi. So, don't get too excited about Obi's goal scoring prowess.
I was getting ready to crown him Golden Boot for sure.
It was on frame at least. Let's just say that.
Is it worse to get nutmegged on a goal or to have it bounce off your back? Which one would be worse?
There's a lot of keepers getting megged with new techniques, new styles these days. That's just a place that guys are shooting the ball more. So off the post, off the back of your head is going to be one of the worst, I think. Coach, you were talking about potentially new tactics, new formation. Obviously, no Lucho Acosta in this preseason match. We did see, as we talked about, Buka playing in a much more advanced role, but sometimes struggling to work the ball through the midfield. Talk about, I know you broke down the match a little bit. You've got an article coming out. What did you see in the way Cincinnati played?
Yeah, the article that's up on CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com kind of outlines 3 bigger ideas that I think you can get from this preseason match that I think might carry through. It's impossible to say. But this ball progression one would be the one that I'd want to highlight. I don't think that we're going to see Buka play in an advanced position, but I would be shocked if we don't see him get into more advanced positions as the season goes on, especially without Lucho Acosta. A lot of that obviously is going to depend on if they bring in someone to replace him. But without Buka as part of that double pivot, we have Obi and Anunga, neither of whom really want to pass the ball forward. It's a lot of sideways and backwards passing, which means the only way to progress the ball for FC Cincinnati looked to be through the wing backs. And a lot of that was through Lucas Engel on the left, right? outside of that, you're trying to skip a line from your center backs. So what you ended up having is the center backs just dumping a lot of balls towards Kevin Denke, or going from to Engel, and then Engel kind of just pushing it towards the middle where Denke was checking into that space. And so that took Kevin out of leading the line. He was dropping in and linking play and having to try to hold up and be sort of like a backboard or a battering ram sort of a position. And that's why I think that until they figure out that ball progression where he can start hanging off the back shoulder of the center backs and threatening him behind, and they have to start worrying about that, I think that he's going to have a slow start. I don't expect him to score a ton of goals in the first few matches because of that ball progression problem, unless for some reason we see them go really direct and you have a guy like Miles Robinson be able to look up and actually just put the ball over the defense's head to a Kevin Denke running. But we didn't see that at all against Philadelphia.
Yeah, we did see Kevin Denke and Lucas Engel we saw Lucas Engel get forward. I think that's the position he wants to push more in an attacking role. Do you think he settles in if he ends up signing with the team? Do you think he settles in and becomes a guy that can get forward on that left side to send balls into Denke, if whether it's, Flores playing next to him or Hadebe when he's healthy back in that left center back role?
I think it's going to be different than we've had over there, than FCC has had over there in a while. But I think it's good different. I don't think you're going to see an Alvaro Barrial or when the Luca Orishano over there, that experiment. You're not going to see a guy who is an attacking, a predator over there, like really going after teams. But Lucas seems like the real deal. He was good on the ball, nice and clean, picked the right passes, put the ball forward into Denke when he had the opportunity, found Buka in some good places. I think the interesting thing that we're going to have to deal with is right now you have Luca Orishano on the right, and then the midfielder that's splitting off to the left was Pavel Buka, who's not really an offensive player. He's more of a box-to-box midfielder, if anything, arriving late, not being that player running in behind. So you saw a couple times when Engel tried to slot him in, and he was like, oh yeah, I should make that run. And then the ball would roll out, or it would kind of get into a position where he couldn't make a cross. So if there is a different player there, whether it's a Dado or a Kubo or somebody that can link up on the left side with Engel, I think what you'll see is he will be a lot more of getting that assist to the assist, or the MLS assist, if you will, rather than like getting forward and like whipping balls in that lead to direct goals.
Which is like an absolute godsend for FC Cincinnati, because we struggled so much to get the ball past midfield. At times, people would just crowd the midfield line, and just completely gang up on us, trapping us on the outside. So our really effective players, as you mentioned, Barrial the year before, and then also Orishano this past season, you really couldn't see the asset play out unless we were able to progress the ball through the middle of the field. So it'd be really nice to have somebody that could just be solid in possession and find the right pass.
Yeah. Well, we saw at the end of that match, we saw a lot of the FCC2 players in there that were brought up for the preseason camp. And we saw a lot of the young guys step in there. Cirilla was in there. We saw Jimenez was in for a bit. Guys like Dado, he wasn't in. He's still nursing a hamstring injury. But do we see any of these young guys able to step into not the Lucho role, but to fill a role in that midfield with ball progression? So like Dado's been in there. He has played that role before, not to the level that Acosta has, but he stepped in as at 10 a number of times last season. He's good on the ball. Does his vision suffer, or what is it with Dado that maybe we don't see him stepping into that role this season?
I think it's just being able to read what's going on behind you. I think he struggled at times to that. I mean, how many times did we see Dado take a dive last season? I think
they were pretty though.
Yeah, they were pretty dives.
They looked good.
But that was more of a product of not being aware of your surrounding and spacing, and just falling at any contact because he's lost possession of the ball. So I need to see Dado be a little bit more commanding with the ball. And I think he was a lot better as a false 9. It could be the wrong term, but that kind of playing attacking forward a little bit. I think he was better at that than he was at dropping back entirely and playing that. And then you got the defensive side of it. I don't think Dado is necessarily, not that Lucho was a savant at defensive work, but I don't see that Dado can fill in that role and be that defensive predator.
He is the guy at this moment that has experience over the others. So we're judging based on what we've seen him do. Coach or Jason, what you saw in the young guys in this particular match or any of the FCC 2 matches last season, do you see any of those guys stepping up as even a guy coming off the bench, being able to hold on to the ball, progress the ball in this midfield with the ones team?
Sounds like a question for Coach.
Man, it's so hard to tell because the biggest thing that you deal with at this level, and you hear athletes say it all the time, jumping from one level to the next, is speed of play. And playing in a midfield position where you're looking to be a ball progressor, that is paramount because, like Justin is talking about with Dado, you're having to check your shoulder as you're receiving the ball, spot that next runner, take a touch, get it out of your feet, and get that ball onto the next runner, like all in a half second before somebody's coming near you and you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll just fall and hope for the foul. And we saw guys like Malik Pinto, when he had time and space, was pretty good. But whenever he got closed down, it's like either pass it straight negative or maybe even a turnover. It's really hard for me to judge Dado because when he played, he was playing in a team that was so used to relying on Lucho Acosta, and he's trying to fill in as a Lucho analog, which I've already said is not possible. Plus, for him, it's even worse. He's not that kind of player. Or he's playing on a team with Lucho Acosta, where Lucho's doing all the ball progression. So he's not being asked to do that. He's being asked to get in space, take a touch, and try to get it to Lucho. Doesn't matter where Lucho is, try to get it to Lucho. That's your main job, kid. And so it's going to remain to be seen what he is actually capable of when you take those training wheels or those constraints off. I don't think that he can be a great ball progressor in this league. I agree with Justin when he used the term false nine. I would say he could play as a 10, but you're looking for him to link play where you're like checking into space, receiving it, and playing negative or square. You're not going to like turn on the half turn with Dado and have them hit like through balls or raking passes out to the wingers as they're running on and those sorts of things. Like he's going to play much more simple. He's more suited to play like a tiki-taka style where he's just like touch it, get it off his foot, touch it, get it off his foot over and over until he has that turn, that chance where a defender doesn't close on him because he's playing so quick there. And then he can turn and see the game a little bit develop in front of him. But it's going to take time because he has to get used to the speed of play.
Do you think that, before we get to that comment, do you think that Dado could use a loan?
I mean, that's
USL
another
championship.
I could use a loan, Justin.
I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that. I mean, I think that he's shown that he can be a valuable depth piece for the first team. So it's all dependent on, can Pat Noonan find enough minutes to make it worth it for him? And, can he get time in Leagues Cup? It's going to do better for him as long as he's getting, 20 minutes, 15, 20, 30 minutes in most matches. It'd be better for him to be with FC Cincinnati first team. Now, if he goes 2 or 3 games in a row at times where he's not playing because he hasn't quite gotten there yet, because Evander comes in and is staying healthy, then I think he would do better with a loan because he needs to play day in and day out to get used to those sorts of that speed of play and that sort of gameplay.
And he's clearly head and shoulders better than anything in MLS Next right now. So he's just kind of in that weird spot. That's the only reason I speculate a USL championship move.
And I wonder if Lucho being gone and this possibility of changing up the entire style of play to a certain extent would benefit Dado a little bit, kind of piggybacking on what Coach said, because he's been asked to do a job that he's not really capable of doing. If you change up the system and how you're expected to play, maybe that's going to benefit his style of play a little bit more.
Yeah, Fred Bittlinger says here on Facebook that having gone to many FCC 2 games last year, players are being developed, and with time and patience, they'll be prepared to provide minutes, but their experience is developmental. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think they've done a good job of getting guys in other competitions from the FCC 2 team, getting some young guys in. I'd like to see them get some more minutes early on in this season for sure, just to see what we have and get get them used to that speed of play. I think that when Dotto was counted on early to be the 10 in some of these, I think it was even the CONCACAF Champions Cup competitions, he was not Lucho Acosta, obviously, and people were expecting that and hoping that. And I think he tried to play like that in one match where he was roaming, and it just wasn't, we couldn't find him. And then the next match, he kind of stayed central, and it was, people are like, where is he? Right? He's centrally, and that's where he likes to play. So I do think that we'll get into, I want to talk about Dotto a little bit later in my final thoughts, but I do think maybe a new system, a new changeup could benefit him, even if Evander is on the pitch. I think there's opportunity there. Guys, I want to, as we move into the second half of our show, let's think Beyond Exercise. It's a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. And in fact, they help some of our local MLS Next, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. Let's move into Justin, we said at the top of the show, we've got some new content coming from Cincinnati Soccer Talk. And I know you've been pushing some of that. We've got a whole new team of writers, some new podcasters coming on, and we're getting some new faces out in front of people from our team, but also from, other Cincinnati soccer outlets. So I'm going to pass it to you and let you talk a little bit about some of the orange and blue profiles.
Yeah, so the orange and blue profiles last year kind of was a hit on the fans, right? Highlighting some of the fans that make FC Cincinnati so special. This year, we kind of want to go and, still have that, soccer community in Cincinnati, but also kind of highlight some of these phenomenal players and people from Cincinnati that have moved on. We've already interviewed Lauren Donovan. If you guys are unfamiliar with her story, she was a Loveland youth soccer player that is now playing in the Czech Republic. Just signed her first professional league contract at FC Slovasko. So check that out. It's a very interesting story of how, was she in, was she out? Is she going to continue to play? And she made that leap, and it's worked out for her really well. And then recently, Christy had an incredible interview with Lady Vol, Kylie Simmons. That was an awesome capturing the essence of being a collegiate athlete, right? The day-to-day struggle of the mental aspect and the physical aspect of preparing for the game, and then also overcoming some barriers and expectations. So if you're really interested in a Westchester native in her pursuit for being an awesome soccer player, check that one out. And then also upcoming, we have a piece with Trace Terry. Nathan in our group is going to sit down with him, and he was at Bowling Green State, recently got drafted to the Seattle Sounders. He was a top 30 player in the country, so definitely check those out. It's incredible how many players have come through Cincinnati or was brought up in Cincinnati that are just phenomenal soccer players. So I'm glad that we have such a great writing and podcasting team that's willing to focus on those for a little bit, take a little break from FC Cincinnati and kind of celebrate Cincinnati.
Yeah, and you'll find all those videos on our YouTube channel, Cincinnati Soccer Talk on YouTube. Fantastic interviews, some new faces. We've cleaned up our YouTube channel quite a bit, so if you want to go over there and visit, you'll see some new playlists with the orange and blue profiles. All of our podcasts have their own playlist, so love for you to check us out over on YouTube. And speaking of our other podcast, Jersey Swap, Jeff Tebbets has recorded just a preview for us of one of his upcoming shows. Check this out.
Hey guys, this is Jeff Tebbets, host of the Jersey Swap podcast. This week, we are continuing our box-to-box coverage by bringing in a special guest, the voice of FC Cincinnati, Tom Galerter. It's been a hot minute since we've had Tommy G recording with us, so we're bringing him on to talk about the upcoming year, as well as the start of FCC's 10th season of professional soccer here in the Queen City. We're counting down to the home opener, so I hope you'll join us and listen in this week.
And if you missed, there was one just released, Jersey Swap with George Metellus. It was a fantastic interview. Be sure to check that out on all of our outlets at Cincinnati Soccer Talk, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are streamed. If you'd like to support Cincinnati Soccer Talk and making the content that we make and the new stuff that's coming out, head over to cincinnati-soccertalk.com/support. From there, you're able to sign up to our Patreon page or make a one-time donation. A $5 per month Patreon subscription enters you into our Growler Cup competition, where if you correctly pick the outcome of FCC matches over the course of the season, you could win some sweet prizes. So check us out there on Patreon. That's one of the other areas we're looking to develop some new content there for our patrons who support us. We want to provide you with some great content. So we're working on some of that as well. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about the Concacaf Champions Cup, because FCC has their first match coming up in 9 days, I believe. February 18th, we kick off against Motagua. Did I say that right? I think I said that right.
Nailed it.
And but the games have already begun. The matches have already begun. Have you guys watched any of these? You've seen some of the outcomes. One of them's a bit surprising. Tigres dropping their opening match, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tigres wasn't the only surprising one.
No.
Cavalry out of the Canadian Premier League, the Calgary Cavalry, knocked off Pumas. So 2-1 up in the Great White North. So I'm sure that score will flip when they head back down.
No chance. No chance.
To Mexico. But big win for the team up in Canada. That was pretty awesome. I did watch a little bit of that match too.
So it sounds like it's chaos already, and it's just started.
Yeah.
The MLS teams have not started their play yet. Who they will start, coming up here in just a couple of days. Chaos ensues. We head down to FC Cincinnati, heads down to Motagua to play. Guys, do you think we've looked at them? We've talked about this. We don't need to go too deep into the analysis of this game quite yet. We've got 2 matches against them coming up. We assume Cincinnati gets past that first round. But beyond that, what do you guys see on the horizon for FC Cincinnati in this particular competition?
I mean, this is a bracket where you could easily see FC Cincinnati make it all the way to the semifinals. But you could also see FC Cincinnati drop out second round. So there's just so many unpredictable teams currently facilitating our side of the bracket. I mean, you have Tigres, who we've mentioned is kind of a really expensive team, but not very well put together. You have, I know Real, is Real Esteli on our side as well? I think they are.
That's who played
Yeah.
Tigres, and
Yeah,
that's who played Tigres in the first round.
That's a team that, last year, the same kind of thing. They took on Club America, beat them in the first round. Now Club America came back and won that second series. So we expect that to happen. But there's a lot of teams down, and I may be wrong here, but I feel like Cincinnati could have a clear path to semifinals if they get some cohesion. The biggest worry is that we are, preseason match 4, and we don't really know what our starting lineup is going to look like.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next question, Justin, is does Cincinnati go into the CONCACAF Champions Cup as a win at all costs, bring home the hardware, let's figure this out and let's do this, or let's use this as an opportunity to figure out our lineup and go into the season earlier than anticipated with a lineup that we think we can run with? Coach?
Sorry.
Man, I think that you guys are talking about the exact crux of this situation and the experience that you're going to get for these players when you talk about what happened last year with Club America, and you talk about what just happened with Tigres and what happened in Canada. Playing on the road in CONCACAF is really hard. We've seen it with the U.S. men's national team. We've seen it in the Champions Cup. To go into this game, to go down to Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and just think that you're going to be like, oh, tinkering with things like a preseason. Number one, there's a really good chance you're going to lose that match. And number two, you're missing out on the chance to say, like, hey, let's forge this steel in fire right now. I mean, you know, the best steel is forged in the fire of a dumpster, I think. So like throw this group together, get them down there, and just let them start to cook. I think that the CONCACAF Champions Club has enough gravitas to it. If you get to play Tigres in the second round, or even if you're playing the Nicaragua squad, you know, to have your players go through something like that early in the season, you get to start to see what they're made of. So I think you have to go all in and try to win it. Now, am I saying that you rush back a player like Teenage Hadebe if he's still feeling the hamstring, or Dado? No, because you're not going to mortgage the future for these games. But I definitely don't think you can treat this like a preseason match, or else you might get beat in Honduras, and then all of a sudden you're coming back home to TQL, which, by the way, where FCC was not very good last year, and being like, we need to win by how many goals to progress, and nobody wants that.
Exactly.
And this season going into the Concacaf Champions Cup feels quite a bit different than last season, because we, at least going in, had a sense of our starting lineup, but we did see the likes of Dado playing. We saw Malik Pinto get some significant minutes in there. We saw Brett Halsey in getting some assists, some goals in those early matches in the Concacaf Champions Cup. This season, we don't have a lineup that we know we can count on quite yet. So Jason, what in your head, what do you think we'll see out of this, maybe this first lineup going into Honduras?
I don't think we're going to see, unless obviously the whole Evander Lucho thing still needs to get worked out. And with that being said, you still got guys who are not going to be match fit. Let's say Evander comes here, he's not going to be match fit. You got guys who are still nursing injuries, like we've mentioned with Miazga, Hadibi, a few others. I think we're going to see kind of a lineup put together with duct tape and baling wire down in Honduras. It's not going to be the lineup that we're going to be used to this time in June or July. But one thing I would like to see, I'd like to see that Orishano Denke combo get cooking down in Honduras. And that's a good place for them to kind of get their first, a taste of combat, so to speak, because there have been a lot of MLS teams who've gone down to Costa Rica, gone down to Honduras and Guatemala, who have, as Jose is saying right here, they have gone down there and gotten absolutely shocked and smoked in the opening round. So, it's going to be a touch and go game, I'm afraid. But I think we have enough offensive firepower that we could get ourselves at least a win out of it.
Coach, let me throw a question at you that maybe we didn't talk about pre-show, is just the chemistry, because Jason brought it up, the Orishano and Denke linking up. We'd like to see that. Where do you think we lack currently the most chemistry on the field? Is it through the midfield, or is it down the sidelines? Maybe the better question is, what chemistry, what link ups do you want to see the quickest? Is it across that back line, or is it that front?
I would think that back line should see it. So that's not going to be my answer, because those are veterans. Those are high TAM, high level players, like across the board, unless you are starting Flores, in which case that's going to be a hole on the field. A young kid trying to link up, you're not going to get chemistry there. But I want to see the left side moving into attack. We hit on it a little bit earlier when you talk about whether it's in goal, that's what we're hoping, right? Or whether it's Brett Halsey would be, the next guy up on the left, unless you're flipping Alvis Powell over there. I want to see how we can progress the ball forward over there, because I think Orishano is going to hold some gravity on the right, which we didn't have a lot last year. And so for FC Cincinnati to have a more dynamic attack, but then it would be silly not to answer the chemistry that you want to see the quickest being between that front part of the attack, whether it be Orishano, if it's Kubo playing up there, those guys, and Kevin Denke, right? Because he's the guy that you're going to be expecting to bang in goals. And the way FC Cincinnati look like they want to defend is on the front foot and pressing. So that chemistry is going to work on both sides of the ball. So, man, if I am Pat Noonan, I'm having those guys like doing some 3-legged races and passing eggs back and forth on spoons, doing Ouija board together. I don't know, but you guys got to get those guys clicking like soon. Hit up your sorority and be like, what kind of team building activities can we do to really feel like a family here?
You know what's wild? That was the question that I believe it was Laurel posed to Pat Noonan last year, was just the team bonding exercises and stuff. I think that Pat was the one that addressed it and said that that's probably an area that he could improve on the best in coaching, is being able to really get these the groups of guys to kind of, gel and kind of see each other a little bit more off the field. And I'd like to see them do that a little bit more this year. I think there was some effort toward the end of 2022, and I think we need to kind of relight that fire.
Well, Coach says Ouija boards and sororities are the way to do that. So
let's do it, man.
Maybe not.
What Coach has in mind I don't know what Coach has in mind with the sororities there.
Hey, we'd love for you to get in touch with us at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. You can tweet us at Cincy Soccer Talk or email us at feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com. We would love to hear from you. If you've got questions for us here on the show, for any of our shows, if you'd like to see, players interviewed on our orange and blue profiles, people that and are having successful careers, we would love to hear from you. Reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do to get your content here on the show. Guys, we talked a lot about FC Cincinnati. We've talked about some upcoming matches. There's still some preseason games to play. But we have this FC Cincinnati 2 news that they're entering the U.S. Open Cup this season. So FC Cincinnati 2 makes their first appearance in this tournament. This is the oldest soccer cup that's still running here in the United States. They drew New York Pan Cyprian. Am I saying that right? Pan Cyprian in the first round. What do you guys think about FCC 2? I know there's a lot of talk last season that we would love to see our 2 team play in the Open Cup, but we just couldn't do it. It wasn't possible last season. Are you excited about seeing them in this competition, or would you rather see FC Cincinnati, the top team, in this tournament?
If we're going to play it, I'd rather see the top team in the tournament. And there are roster mechanisms where you could have made it work for the senior team, like the 4-day call up or whatever. There were ways to make it work. MLS has chosen not to make it work. U.S. Soccer Federation has chosen never to give a darn about the U.S. Open Cup. So here we are. But it is good experience. I mean, I was going to bring this up earlier when we were talking about Dotto. This is where I think MLS senior teams not playing in the cup kind of hurts a little bit, because that was your opportunity to get the younger guys a chance to play against teams who, for them, that's their Super Bowl, right? Like if we had gone to Louisville City or Lexington or whatever and run out a B team, that they're going to give them a hell of a game. And I think maybe it doesn't have as much gravitas with the 2 teams, but also it would be really, really funny if the FCC 2 team made a really deep run in this tournament. I would find that great and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, none of us can pretend that we wouldn't be down at Lynn Family Stadium just to relive a little bit of that old chum.
I'd bring streamers and a wacky wailing inflatable tube man.
Let's do it.
Would it have the same feel as,
for me? Yes,
the Cincinnati USL team making the run deep in the tournament if our FCC 2 team made that same run? No,
because we were building towards something, right? We were trying to make our path forward through the U.S. soccer culture, and we did that. Grabbed the headlines on ESPN. Everyone was talking about FC Cincinnati during that run, but for FC Cincinnati 2 to do it, I mean, the story would just be, a Division 3 team making a run through the tournament. It wouldn't have as much vigor.
Now, so FCC2 has just announced some pretty big signings here recently. So they're taking things seriously, I think, on our development side of the academy and the twos. And, going back to the comment we saw earlier about developing players for that ones team, I think we're going to see some of these young guys move up through the ranks in a couple of years. I would love to see them make a run. I don't think they'll make the run to the end, to the semifinals or finals, but I would love to see them do well in this tournament to get some of that experience against some tougher competition, Jason, as you mentioned, and just see what some of these players are made of. If for no other reason, I'd love to see them out with some tougher competition against some higher quality teams before we see them pulled up to the senior roster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's the side that you're not thinking about, that you lose if you say, yeah, the one team, the top team is going to be in it, right? Building the two team by spending money, but put players on the two team that are unproven, that maybe have a higher price tag, but you don't quite know what you're going to get yet. Watch them develop a little bit, and that money's not hitting your salary cap with the first team. Then you pull them into the first team when you're like, yeah, this is going to be worth it, when you have to use the GAM or whatever at that point, because the salary or the transfer fee that you pay does not hit the first team contract until you pull them into the first team officially, till they sign that first team contract. So you're not, that whole issue that we have with guys like Orishano, where we're like, is he going to maybe be a DP? It's not because of his salary. Obi was a DP not because of his salary, but because of the transfer fee having to be amortized into his salary. And you can avoid some of that for the first year of the contract. You still end up having to pay it, but it's just a really great way to build those guys and build a team. So in the long run, if FCC2 is going to be the team playing in this tournament, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see, hey, get some higher price, pay some transfer fees, and put a team together that maybe could make a run. Not because you necessarily want or care about that team winning, but again, you want that experience of those players. You want to see what those guys look like playing against real professionals. You want to see what those guys look like playing against, the 35-year-old that used to be in MLS and now is trying to prove a point that, these punk kids on the next pro team shouldn't be here. You want to see what they look like in that environment. So this will be a great chance for that. So am I a little bit sad that it's not the first team? Maybe a little bit, because I'm sad for guys like Dado that would have a chance, Steven Jimenez, that might get a start for the first team in the Open Cup. But at the same time, you get the other side of the coin. So this could be a really good thing as well.
But there's nothing to say that they won't send some of those guys down. I don't think. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the roster mechanism is necessarily for sending them to the two team, but there might be a chance for Jimenez to go down for some of these games, especially like if they advance and they are playing Indy 11 or something, and you want to give them some more experience, I think.
I see if we're in the semifinals, we'll send Dinke down.
That would be so funny.
Injury rehab, is that what we're calling that?
Shut.
Guys, the match for FCC2 against New York Penn Cyprian is March 20th, 7:30 at NKU Soccer Stadium. It will be streaming live on YouTube. We've got some time before that. We've got just over a month before that, so I'm sure we'll talk more about that match and that team in the coming weeks. Guys, it's about that time where we move into our final thoughts and wrap up the show. And I have another question for us tonight to kind of focus our final thoughts. And, we talk about players that surprise us every season. And sometimes it's 3 matches in, sometimes it's by midseason. We look back and go, man, this player was not who I thought he was, right? So before the season even begins, which FCC player will be the surprise of the season for you? Jason, I'm going to start with you because I think you probably you always nail questions like this. So I'm just going to let you go.
Go on your favorite betting app of choice and put down Sergio Santos for 8 or more goals on the year. He is going to be this year's Yuya Kubo. This is his breakout year. I can feel it. But seriously though, I do hope Sergio Santos does have a good year this year. I know a lot of people have been giving him some guff. I like the guy. He seems like the vibes guy of the team. I want to see him put a few goals up on the scoreboard. So I
Or
think
the
he's going to
Colorado
be.
Rapids after FCC
Yeah.
buys him out. You're exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this might be Sergio Santos' time to shine. I have hope for our guy.
Yeah. All right. Green hair or not, Sergio Santos is going to be the surprise of the season.
Didn't he rock blue there for a while too?
He did.
Yep.
He did.
Yeah,
I think he
I
had
like
his
the
best
blue
games
better.
in green, but
Yeah.
yeah. Coach, who's going to be your surprise player of the season?
Listen, last season, Lucho Acosta led this team both in progressive passes and progressive receptions. There was this cartoon when I was a kid called Recess, and the quarterback, Vincent LaSalle, would throw the ball up and run and catch the touchdown. And that's what I picture from Lucho Acosta. This is all to say the guy that has to step up and be the surprise player is going to be the guy that's going to take on a lot of that load, at least on the ball progression passing side. And that's going to be Pavel Buka. When he gets to slide back into a deeper role, play alongside Obi with his being his second year in the league, the David Goss theorem idea, getting the speed of play, understanding the travel, and then also not having that gravity of Lucho. Oh, do I have to try to force it into him? But giving him the ability, like, can you spray it out wide, right, to Luca Orashano? Can you look for that diagonal? Can you pick out Kevin Denke in behind? I think Pavel Buka is going to do some really great things. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a best 11 player or an all-star. But I think he's going to be a player at the end of the season that we look at. And with FCC is successful, we're going to say Pavel Buka was a huge part of that.
He showed out in this preseason match. I think we saw some things from him that really surprised me that we didn't get to see much of last season. So, Coach, I hope you're right. I like that. That's a good shout. Justin.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brenner will be our Baird will be our surprise player. I think Corey Baird got a bad rap last year. I think he would agree that it probably wasn't pretty at times. We were really struggling offensively at the beginning of last season, and that's when Corey really got most of his playing time. I think when you're not having to anticipate chaos that Lucho brings, I think Corey could be a more effective player up top. I think that the run timing with him and Bupinza, I think they were occupying the same space at times. I think it was just kind of a mess. And I think that Corey, kind of like what you were saying with Buka, but with domestic, Corey is got another year under his belt with Pat Noonan, understands kind of the way the system works. And then now you're not going to be so dependent on reading the future. So I think he and Coach brought up a great point. If Corey Baird plays kind of that dual 10 role, his creation, like his ability to create on the ball, is actually surprisingly big. Coach, you what was that stat that you had pulled up?
Yeah, just FBref. If you look at his stat metrics, he's in like the 10th percentile or lower in almost every category except chance creation. He's in the 90th percentile amongst forwards. And that's over the past 365 days, which includes a big chunk of time for FC Cincinnati where he wasn't doing much. So I do think he has that ability via 1 and 2 touch play to create shots for others.
Yeah. Well, good shout. We saw in the comment I put up there, Corey Baird couldn't be worse than 2024. So we hope that was the system that he played in, right? I think a change in system, change in formation, change in whoever's carrying the ball down is that number 10 could benefit Corey Baird. I'm going to go with Dotto. I had high hopes for him last year. We got him involved in some matches that we needed a 10 when Lucho was hurt, when Lucho was out a couple times. Again, he struggled in that role, but I do think that experience in those games that he played, those matches that he played last season, some more time with the team, some more time with the senior team, I think, and needing someone who's going to be able to progress the ball. If it's not Lucho, if it's not Evander right away anyway, that Dotto is going to be a guy when he comes back from his injury that we're going to lean on pretty heavy, potentially as one of the double 10s up top, playing just underneath Kevin Denke. I think he's a guy that can create chances. I think he's a guy that can find space and run into that space if he's got a guy that is, guy like Corey Barrett or a guy like Evander that can find those open passes. I think he's got vision up top. He's just not as strong on the ball as we would hope him to be quite yet as a young player. But again, he's a young player. And I'll just go back to this, guys. I said it on the live show that I said Kimi Ordonez was going to have a breakout season last year. And so I could totally be wrong on this, but I do think this might be the year we see something special out of Dotto. So, gentlemen, thanks. Good final thoughts, good shouts for the team, the players. Looking forward to the rest of the preseason, the Concacaf Champions match coming up here in 9 days down in Honduras against Motagua. We've got a lot to talk about. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about our preseason preview. We're going to get some new voices, some new faces in here to talk about some predictions on the season, some new players, our record, where we're going to finish, all of that fun stuff. Hit us up this week on all of our socials. Let us know what you think of the show at feedback@cincinnati-soccer-talk.com. Let us know, what you think. Send us your questions, and thanks for watching.
Bye.